I'm just curious, how many people have been to an in-person event in the last 6 months? Say, okay, handful, quarter. One of the things that we were looking to do really at SupportLogic is to sponsor an event for the community in support and customer success and really get people together. We all came out of the pandemic, and meeting in person has been something most of us haven't done a lot of in the last at least couple of years. So welcome everyone. We are excited to have you join us. I'm going to do a brief intro, and then we're going to have a panel conversation all about unlocking insights and talk about the future of support. This really was a movement that we started in the support space, and it's quickly extended into customer success, into other parts of the organization. What this is here today is we are a software company. I'll tell you a little bit about SupportLogic. This is not an infomercial. We're not here to hard sell you. We are here really about in the spirit of community and bringing peers together to network and talk about common challenges and solutions. And that's why I'm so excited to have our panel here join us in a second. This really started as a movement over a year ago, where we were talking with customers of ours and thought leaders in the industry, and we saw the need to bring a network together of like-minded peers and to talk about some of the topics. There really wasn't a support-specific event in the industry. There's customer success, there's literally every other function in the industry, and what we heard from many of you, as I see your heads shaking, is there was not a support-specific event. So we started down the path of planning it. Of course, this was right during COVID, and we were sort of coming out of it. We were hoping to have an in-person event. Long story short, we had a virtual event last April that about 1,700 people worldwide attended. We were floored. It was an incredible event. 0 software demos, all conversations, topics of interest, challenges, solutions, camaraderie, network building, peers. And so we decided this year we're doubling down. We have a virtual event June 13th to June 15th. So I would encourage all of you to sign up for that. Because it's virtual, we're getting a lot of interest from leaders, frontline managers, frontline practitioners, support engineers, customer success managers, who ordinarily wouldn't be able to necessarily travel to go to a week-long conference. So there are 3 days of great content for all of those roles. I would also encourage you, if you want to speak, if you want some exposure in the industry, if you have something to share, best practice, so on and so forth, register. There's a call for speakers open on the website. And then third, we just announced the SX Live Support Experience Inaugural Awards. So we are looking to recognize teams and individuals who are delivering standout customer experience through the support and customer success functions. And we have a number of categories there. Best performance by a team, individual, best coaching. We're also looking to recognize individual contributors. But I encourage you to check that out. So part of the reason why there's so much interest in support experience is that it benefits every function in the company. How do we unlock the value from support interactions and bring them to other parts of the organization? Some of the analyst firms out there that you're all familiar with estimate approximately 60% of B2B customer interactions occur through support. So there's a lot of rich sentiment data. From a customer perspective, am I happy? Am I frustrated? Do I need this escalated to resolve my issue? Do I have product suggestions that may find their way upstream? But for years, and I would even say decades, that feedback from customers was buried in a silo, right? We all manage our businesses through CSAT, NPS, other metrics, and it's great from a one metric to run the business by, but to be honest, there are a lot of flaws in those operational metrics, right? They're rear view. I was just having this conversation with someone 5 minutes ago. 30 days in the past, they're not actionable, they're subject to survey sample bias. So if you could harness in more of a real-time proactive nature, all of the signals, the rich signals that come through these support interactions, and then partner with your other organizations, whether it's customer success, sales, product, engineering. In today's economy, finance and IT are really getting involved in every single decision. And this isn't about necessarily just one software application or another. This is about investing in your teams, investing in your processes. And so wouldn't it be great to be able to sort of unlock that value of support experience and benefit the whole organization, and really take a front seat, be a driver in terms of company success, company strategy. And that's our mission and that's our belief at SupportLogic, is we help companies to take support and success and help drive business outcomes, from improving customer experience to reducing operational costs and improving employee experience. And this really transcends everything that is done in this world of support and customer experience. So I want to call up our panel, and I'll let everyone introduce themselves, but just by way of name and role. So we have Katherine Sullivan, who's SVP of Customer Success at Salesforce. If you want to come and join us, Katherine.
That's my signal.
Yeah, that's your signal. And then we have Ben Saitz, who's the Chief Customer Officer at Netskope. And we have Erika Voss, who's the VP of Cloud Architecture, Engineering, and Security at Capital One. So welcome, everyone. So why don't we start with a brief introduction for the three of you, and maybe as an icebreaker, share a fun fact about yourself.
All right. So I work at Salesforce and I lead product success, which is an interesting blend. We have basically support, guides, and architects, which are focused on the post-sales engagements. And a fun fact is I have 5 adult children and 3 grandchildren, which is keeping me definitely feeling a little old. Just want to say, not young, I feel old. But yes.
Fantastic. Welcome, Katherine.
Thank you.
So I'm Ben Saitz. I'll use my New York voice. How's that? And so I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Netskope. So my team's responsible for everything after the sale. So PS, CS, support, partner ecosystem, and feedback into engineering, and so on. Been there for almost a year. And my fun fact is, before I took this job, Katherine was my boss. So
That's pretty good. I
Thank
like
you.
that. Okay, so I clearly have a loud voice, I think, in general, so much like Katherine here, I'll use my outside voice. I work for Capital One. Especially listening to everybody so far who I've met, I think I'm here to balance out probably the panel, because I am your IT person who gets annoyed when you don't talk to me about the tech and the solutions with your customers. So I think that's going to be a fun journey, especially as we're here to do this panel. Fun fact about me, I actually have 2 grandkids, so I may not look that old, but I am that old. And we are on a countdown to Disneyland in 32 days. That's really all I care about. So.
And again, Joe Andrews, Chief Marketing Officer at SupportLogic. And fun fact, I'm an avid photographer. I spent part of the afternoon yesterday walking all around Seattle. I don't know how many steps I did, but it was a lot. And taking some of the sites, and it was actually sunny yesterday. And we like to say I'm from the Bay Area. Yeah, I don't want to jinx it. But I think officially I heard that the Bay Area surpassed Seattle for amount of rain this winter, which is, yeah, interesting fact. And that's my California friend over there, David. Yeah, we need the rain, so that's good. All right, so as a starting question, and we want to make this interactive, please, if you have questions, feel free to offer them up. We have a series of questions we want to cover in terms of this topic. But as a starter, would love to talk a little bit about the economic climate. I know that's on everyone's mind. It's proving to be a challenge for us organizationally and investment-wise, and many companies have been affected. So I'd love to hear about what your organizations are doing and how you're addressing both the opportunities and the challenges that come specifically within the world of customer success and support.
Well, I think you've all seen Salesforce in the news. You know how we are obviously in this reflection moment. We're very focused on scaling and productivity. And that's where in my organization, we're having to be very intentional with any investments we're making, and it has to be anchored around an ROI. So the conversations are specifically, will this technology provide us the scale? Will it make us more effective? And we want to make sure we're connecting all of that to the customer experience. So every conversation's grounded, and if it's not in what we call our V2 MOM, which is basically our objectives for the year, we don't do it. So everyone is aligned and very thoughtful in what motions we put in play.
Makes sense? Yeah, how about you, Ben?
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit sobering after the past couple of years of like grow. I think we're really just very intentional about every dollar we spend, every headcount we hire. Do we need it? Do we need it in this location versus that location? I think it's always a matter of, it used to be just headcount. Now it's, what is a salary? What's that going to mean from the budget perspective? And I think for us, in terms of, like GRR is everything for us. We don't know the future of the headwinds in terms of the macroeconomic. I'm not an economist, but so the customers we've got, we want to take extraordinarily good care of. We can't afford to lose any of them, and we can still grow them and keep them healthy. But I don't know what the growth is going to look like in this environment, and so we really are doubling down on that. And the way that really becomes operationalized is because we're on this back end of all this, kind of unconstrained growth. We now have like 8,000 tools. We probably need about half of those. And so there's a lot of focus on like, do we need 2 of these? Can we get by with 1 of these? We have a lot of licenses for this. We need all those licenses. And so just really being very smart about every single dollar we put in the business so we can make sure we've got as many left over to service customers.
Mm-hmm. So some tech consolidation going on. For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Erika, what are your thoughts?
A lot of it for us really is around the automation. Naturally, of course, any technician is going to tell you, any engineer is going to tell you, we want to automate. If we have to do it more than once, we're annoyed. We're going to figure out a way to automate it naturally. But for us, it's all about that customer experience. Customers want to do more with less. And so we think about the tech investment. Is it the right thing, to your point, Ben? Are we buying 3 licenses versus do we really just need 1? Capital One, of course, I work in our software line of business, so we're a new SaaS B2B business under the bank. And so my challenge is our customer experience and what's that going to look like. And it's very focused on, well, I have to have this shiny tool because this one engineering team or this one customer solutions team needs this capability. And I was like, do they need that tool versus like buying a CRM? It's like we should look at just getting one CRM capability to give the best customer experience. And we're unfortunately having the challenges around, but everybody wants their own version of a CRM, and I'm like, yeah, we're not going to do that. So I spend more time influencing what I feel like is my organization of the customer experience of what my tech team should be offering to them. So that's a lot of the challenges we're around, and then really just how can we make that experience for the customer better, faster, smarter, in a more automated fashion. I think it's great. Like we were sitting here, we were talking, Katherine and I was like, yes, I want to be able to do more with less, all like from a phone, but there's still that one customer that's going to make me call them. And I'm like her, don't make me call you. It's annoying. I want to chat with you because I can multitask. And so our solutions architects are in that same challenge. They want to be able to talk to 5 customers at the same time. And so a lot of it for us is how do we deal with the automation with budgets being cut and tech layoffs being a huge thing as well for us. So
it's the new norm, new reality.
It is.
And you mentioned, Erika, a lot about customer experience, and that's front and center. We've come out of probably 2 decades of investment in discussion around CX and customer experience. Customer success has really been in the last decade coming off the backs of the subscription economy. This new phrase around support experience and really unlocking that insight from support interactions for the rest of the organization and for your customers and for CX. What does that mean to you? And we'll start with Erika. How do you see that in terms of a subset, maybe?
I think every customer, at least the ones that I engage with, they want that white glove experience all the time now. That's the support model they want. I even as a customer, like it doesn't matter if I'm going to buy a car, if I'm going to buy a computer, I want someone, quite frankly, to hold my hand all the way through to the end. Even though I know what I'm looking for, I want to know that you care about me for 60 seconds or 60 minutes. And that's the customer success that people want this day and age. It's, COVID has only done what technology was already doing. It's making us be faster. It's making us, evangelize things different. But there's still you still have to connect with me face to face, and I want that face to face connection, even if it's virtual through a Zoom screen. And so I think that's the piece is I want you to care about me, even if it's a short amount of time, all the way through to the end, because I'm going to come back and I'm going to be like, God, I don't know somebody there, but I know Katherine now, and I'm going to come find Katherine when I want to talk about CRM. It's that connection of the customer success is what people want.
Yeah, I think for us, we just talk a lot about the customer's goals are our goals. And so our customers chose our products over some other products for some reason. And so we work really hard to pull that rationale through from the sales process into PS, into CS, into support. So we just understand better why they chose us, how do they measure ROI. It's not about features being used or reports being run, but like how do they justify the expense of our software to their CFOs? And so we can really think about like the whole end-to-end journey about why they use the products, what are their goals, what's their measure for ROI, and are we really driving on the things that deliver that? Happiness is great, but I'd rather have them be successful and achieve ROI than happy. They can be happy too, but if I have to choose, I want them to have a clear case for the money they give us is money well spent. And so when the CFO is looking to do horse trading with budgets, they say, this is the money, this Netskope money has to stay. And this is really, really good ROI. It's got a great experience around it. And so we just want to make sure that we're really zealous in that endeavor.
That's great.
Mm-hmm. Katherine, how about your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we're at a really interesting point when it comes to support or product success in our area. And it's exciting to be a part of it because the conversations are changing. When you think about what we receive in kind of two categories. We've got customers who are needing resolution. We've got customers who need education. And in the past, we would have designed the experience based on our org charts. We don't do that anymore. We've blown that up. And so what we're thinking about is, how do I get you to a simplified engagement model so you don't have to navigate and think about who to go to get an answer and the resolution or the education moment, right? And we have a responsibility to give you a lifeline. So what we're leveraging is simplification, getting you to an expert, getting you to the right outcome. And what's really important to do that, I've got to have good data. And so the conversation's changing too, now that we're harnessing the data, and I'll be really honest, I am a SupportLogic junkie. I love the tool, and here's the why, and I'm very honest about this. I have more signals than I've ever had before that are meaningful, that I can take action on. They're live. And so what it's doing is it's changing my conversation with my business partners. I sit at the table with engineering. I'm coming to the conversation with data that says I have negative sentiment in this area of the product. This is driving frustration, it's driving cost. It's different than saying I have case volume, which is what I was dealing with before. My conversations were, I was kind of like, where you're like, wah, 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 right, with engineering. They weren't hearing me in a way that I could influence. Now I show them actual sentiment, and I can take action with that, and I can change where we're going because of the conversation. And it's elevating, I'll say it, our brand in our organization. Support's a new cool thing, right? And it's fun because we're at that reflection moment that we're going to be a part of some really big change that's going to help the customer experience. And it goes back to, I love what you said about making sure the customer is successful and they're really obtaining that ROI, that outcome. And that means that we've got to align them with the right engagements at the right time for the right outcome.
I love that you say that. And we say at SupportLogic, CX is about this continuum across the customer lifecycle, pre-sale, post-sale, everything in between. And support is important at every part of that journey. And it's no longer I sold the customer something and now I have to support them. If something breaks, I have to solve this issue. Support, the meaning of the word has changed fundamentally, and that function is all about serving the customer throughout the life cycle. So it's totally intertwined with across the CX journey. So I love that you said that. We're going to come back and talk a little bit about working with the other functions, and how do you unlock those insights and share them, as Katherine was saying. I do have to ask a question about, you can't open a news article these days without seeing something about ChatGPT. Who here is using it, by the way? Yeah, most of us. It's fun, right? And in our collective world, it's posed a lot of opportunities. You see a lot of vendors now introducing their latest ChatGPT for X product. So curious about, with this advent of large language AI models, what do you see as both the opportunities but also the challenges that need to be addressed with generative AI solutions?
You're going to appreciate this.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
There is a piece that immediately I go to security. I go to understanding and making sure that we're giving the right information at the right time, right? So we need to have our guide rails. We need the framework around that. We are leveraging it. We have announced we're putting it into Slack. We've got it going into Service Cloud and Sales Cloud. It's going across our Customer 360. So it's definitely something front and center, and we're very thoughtful about how we're going to put controls in place. I'm excited about it because it's going to help me scale. It's going to help me personalize. We use Data Cloud, which is obviously our CDP. That is where I'm rationalizing the information, and I'm going to create personalized experiences that feed it into my teams. So for example, I'm in a chat. I'm going to be able to leverage that insight and personalize the content. We were kind of debating a little earlier around the concept of, is it become overused, and do people feel like, oh, it's just automated and it's not real? I think there is a risk for that, but I feel we're at this really interesting reflection point where we can harness some of that and see how it evolves and learn from it. It's not going to be perfect. We're going to have iterations, and it's going to be cooler as we go, but I'm pretty excited about how I'm going to scale and personalize the experience based on it.
We hear that quite a bit as well. Erika, what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
You're in the world of data.
I am in the world of data, and it stresses me out every day, and I think that's why it keeps me looking like I'm 25. I think there's pros and cons to any tech, I think is really what it comes down to. I think a lot, like Katherine and I were having a great discussion about it, if you use it in the right way and in the best capacity, it could be the greatest thing for you. If you have that hiccup, that one moment, it could become the biggest nightmare for you. And so it's knowing how to use it. It's knowing the way to use it. I love to, we actually just had this debate about ChatGPT, and we were talking about it's the coolest tech out there. And I was like, yes, I remember when I was reading a Time article that in 2023, there was going to be 5 billion IoT devices. It's 2023 now, and I'm like, dear God, my threat landscape or my tech landscape now is so massive that if I try to pick up every single technology today, I can't give the best customer experience. So I'm in that constant trade-off of, does it make sense for us to adopt it now? Like, it's the cool thing today, but give it 6 months, there's going to be ChatGPT 2.0, and it's going to be this next cool thing, and I'm going to be like, great, and I'm still going to be faced with what's the customer experience. And resiliency is another thing we were talking about around it. It's like, I love it when people say, I've designed for fault-tolerant, resilient systems. And I was like, really? Because we're also having outages as an industry. So we're not really fault-tolerant, resilient, and that's kind of where I feel with ChatGPT. It's the cool technology today, but is that giving you the best customer experience still?
By the way, I think we're up to 4.0.
See, there you go.
That's how fast
I'll
it
adopt
happens.
it when it's 21.0.
Yeah.
Oh, it's funny you say that.
Anything to add?
So one of our products this is not a pitch, it's DLP, data loss prevention. And since it came out, a lot of our customers have said, you got to help me figure out how to block my employees from putting our data into ChatGPT, because everybody wants to go out and play with the new hamster wheel in town. So it's funny you mentioned the security piece. So that's a new concern that our customers are saying, which is, this is cool, but we don't want our employees dumping all their stuff in there to see what they can do with it. I'm very optimistic and bullish about it, but I would say it's early innings for sure. And I remember I was at Google for a bunch of years, and there was an expression: is it a problem looking for is it a solution looking for a problem? And I'm not saying it is. I think we will figure out. But I'm very practical, and so I'm always saying, well, what's the practical use of this? It's really cool. I can talk about it at a cocktail party, but I'm not ready to go out there and just deploy it against my business. I have way too many other things that I know have to be done and solved tomorrow, besides running a 30-month pilot on ChatGPT. Yeah. But I'm hopeful that smart companies like SupportLogic will figure out those business applications. You know, the one I was thinking about the other day was maybe you could write all my knowledge base articles, because gosh, I don't have enough people writing knowledge base articles, and that would be a great application. So you can put that in your roadmap perhaps, where it would just like crawl all the stuff and write knowledge base articles, and my team would not have to spend time doing so. Yeah. So I mean, there are applications I'm sure someone smarter than me will figure out, but right now, it's a good talking point for us. It's not something that we're really like putting a lot of energy into.
And it's funny you say that. We didn't talk about this, but we do see the big opportunity for writing knowledge base articles, right? There's a big push. There is a big, yeah, exactly. There's a big push for self-service, and customers want to find the answer in the fastest way possible, as long as it's helpful and as long as it's accurate. And so the concern side of that is, because it's so easy, and we're using it in marketing now to generate ideas and outline articles, but will the customer get the right answer, or will the proliferation of content just make it harder for the customer to get the right answer? And will that drive more assisted support channel calls? So that's sort of both sides that we're seeing. We also see an opportunity at SupportLogic for being able to have support engineers, customer success managers, be able to write responses that are, point accurate, right tone, and so on and so forth. And so we're going through the process of testing that. But there are lots of opportunities, and it's just, I think, a matter of balancing it against some of the risks. But technology evolution is not going away anytime soon. We're all in this business, presumably most of us. Shifting gears a little bit, back to kind of the core topic about unlocking support signals and what we're doing. So Katherine shared what they're doing at Salesforce. Would like to expand on that a little bit and maybe talk about some of the challenges. Historically, we know, right, with support and even success in the early days was a little bit in the silo, and the organization's questioning what's the purpose, what are you doing? So what do you think the opportunities are to use AI to harness the signals and to inform, as Katherine shared, right, product engineering with exact data points? Let's expand on that a little bit and talk about some of the other opportunities there. Sure.
One of the things, and I call it my aha moment with leveraging the technology and SupportLogic specifically, is we're constantly looking at signals, right? We come into it with a perspective, TTR, CSAT, you throw a KPI out there, and I'm sure we're all using it in some form. And my framing is they're all signals. What it was really, though, changing, or where we were kind of having that reflection moment, it was all kind of looking backwards. It already happened, right? So I'm always just in this mode of saying, okay, well, that happened 2 weeks ago. Now, how do I prevent it from happening in the future? With leveraging the technology now, I'm live in the cases. Like, we're looking at data live before it's closed. So we have swarm leads, which are, a new model we've rolled out this past year that's been really, really effective. And the swarm leads and managers are in there looking through SupportLogic at the case content, right? They're getting signals from the logic in SupportLogic that's saying, hey, we're seeing a negative sentiment increase, spike. So when we started understanding that we could see signals and leverage it real time, we saw a 56% decrease in our escalations. So you can imagine, when I think about escalations, I think, okay, negative customer sentiment and cost. So ineffective, right? Because we're gonna get all these people, we're gonna rally around it, and is it the ultimate experience for the customer? No, it's horrible. They don't wanna have to escalate. So what we were doing is like, hey, we need to de-escalate this real time. And what we could see, leveraging the technology, is this true, like, red flag. Hey, something is not happening right here. Managers jump in, swarm leads jump in. That also gave us, by the way, per manager and swarm lead, an additional hour back a day. They were more productive. So I started looking at this, and I'm like, I can quantify that. I can see lower costs from an escalation perspective. And then we had this real interesting situation when we first were really getting our arms around it. My chief of staff's like, hey, we're seeing a spike in negative sentiment. And her and I are looking at it going, oh, this doesn't seem good. But we were kind of at the first going, well, what does it mean? What are we going to do? And this was at the beginning of our journey. Well, sure enough, 2 weeks later, my CSAT took a dive. I'm like, we knew this 2 weeks ago. We didn't take action. That only happened once. Because we now, immediately we see that, we're sending out alerts in Slack. Actions are being taken, which then changed. And I'm really happy to say, like for Marketing Cloud, we're not a watermelon. And what I mean by that, it's not green on the outside, red in the middle. It is solid green because we're actually in there making changes happen real time. So it changed my model. I'm like in the data live, and that's how we run our business. It's not oh, it happened 2 weeks ago, now I gotta go explain why it happened, now I gotta put a plan in place to go change it.
Yep, so it's more real time, more proactive.
Yes.
That's a theme that we talk a lot about and hear from other success and support leaders is wanting to become more proactive instead of being reactive. Erika, Ben, do you have thoughts about how your organizations are doing that in the space of CX?
Yeah, a lot of it is much like what Katherine said. It's really about being proactive. I mean, data is going to drive any type of behavior change. It's going to drive any type of decision. And if you can get proactively ahead of it, like, especially from an engineering standpoint, that's the worst thing I have to sit through is a root cause analysis because I love it. You sit there, why did it happen? What's going on? I'm just like, we know why. Like, there's a warning sign that you already saw. To your point, you saw something 2 weeks ago, and it's like, oh, exactly, red light, red light. Oh, just unplug it. Yeah, let's unplug it. We'll figure it out later. So I mean, it's those things with engineering where it's the same thing. I don't want to be a firefighter at 40. How old am I? 47 years old. I liked it when I was 22 doing it. Now someone's calling me 8 o'clock at night. I'm like, look, I work East Coast hours, man. I'm like going to bed and I'm getting ready to watch Dateline. I'm like, that's like you're waking me up to tell me that you saw something 2 weeks ago, and I'm sitting here thinking, shit, why didn't you handle it 2 weeks ago? And to your point, then I'm writing a deck. And so it's get me to be proactive, get the engineering teams to be proactive. And like, I love that you guys do that at Salesforce, and it's something we actually do even at Capital One is we sit down with customer success. What's that customer experience like? What's the customer gonna say? How are we anticipating this feature, this release, this next bug? Like if we had to roll things back, what's the impact? I mean, that's when you know you're jiving well in a proactive manner is you're sitting with your customer success team. Not a lot of people like it. I mean, pros and cons. Engineers love it. Some engineers, I drag them to the table, but then they learn something, which is good. They know not to be a firefighter next time.
And that's, Ben, just building on Erika's point about cross-functional collaboration. It's a great segue, right? You all are managing several functions within your orgs. How are you able, people process-wise, to drive that cross-functional collaboration, go from more of a siloed approach to one where you're working together to solve these challenges?
I think we just put a lot of focus on the handoffs. I mean, I think we're functional PS, CSM, support, and we just put a lot of emphasis on really intentional handoffs from team to team. They're going to have handoffs. We always have a rule about warm handoffs, like never ping pong a customer and say call somebody else. So I think it's just operationalizing that and having everybody know what their lane is. We have different tools. There's a PS tool is different than the CS tool, is different than the support tool. And then so we use Snowflake on the back end with a data lake to then begin to stitch things together. And then the element we're also adding in is actual product telemetry. That's how we can get really proactive. Like we can mine ticket data and we do stuff like that, and that's essential. But for us, the next level is how do we tie all that data in terms of CSM account health scores to ticket performance scores to product telemetry data, and then we actually have a really compelling view about where our customers are having success or where they're maybe detaching and disengaging from the products in some way, as well as do they have any alerts we need to make them aware of. That's kind of like table stakes, but it's the under the hood stuff about what are the signals they're not telling us that they haven't logged in 2 weeks. And maybe we didn't see that, and now we can tie that to they also haven't logged a ticket in 2 months, and all of a sudden you got a red alert happening there. And so just trying to put all these signals together in one data warehouse, and then we can actually try and, with the AI question, is try and find the nuggets out there. It's too vast of an ocean to try and do it manually.
Great. Katherine, you talked a little bit about your cross-functional work with product and engineering, but a little closer to home, talk a little bit about success and support and the various sub-functions within and how you're all collaborating together. What are the secrets to success there?
Yeah, we're implementing what we are building out to be like a health score, and we're using Data Cloud to rationalize all of our signals, and from consumption of the products to really identify, do we have shelfware, right? That keeps me up at night. If you purchase something, you're not using it. What are the cases coming in? What are the sentiments? So we're actually going to be pulling in sentiment analysis into our health score. So when you think about all these signals and rationalization of it, we've got to look at what activities and engagements we need to trigger in a more intentional, automated way. Before we were going into this model where we had a lot of great team members, we were throwing at the problem. We've got to be thinking about how we do this in a scale, and we leverage technology to be intentional with these engagements. It's a journey we're on, but what's really happening right now in the success world is we're trying to make sure that we align what are they trying to achieve. I go back to that resolution, education, right? How do we help them be more successful and not have them to navigate and try to figure out where to get the right expert? So when we leverage all this insight, I feel like that allows me then to sit at the table with my success peers, and we drive more, I'll say, strategic type of changes based on what we're learning from the data.
Mm-hmm. So is it fair to say some of the quick decisions that are now table stakes can be made because of the data?
Oh, 100%.
And you can spend your time, reallocate your time to the bigger questions.
Right, and it's going to be like a learning experience. We're leaning into it we have some assumptions, I'll call it a hypothesis of the why behind some of what we'll call not healthy signals we'll see in some areas. Mm-hmm. And when we have that, we want to go out there and say, okay, let's test that hypothesis. Did we actually put the right activities? We need to orchestrate this. That's one of the things we're working on, is orchestrating the journey and building out. And every time we make a change in the orchestration, did we see a positive or negative implication of it? And this is going to mobilize our activities. We had originally separated our teams out, and we were, again, org structure, right? And we were not being as effective, because we realized too that in conversations, a customer might call you for an education moment, but they have a friction moment too, a resolution issue. The two overlap at all times. And how do you become more effective in that? How do we upscale everyone? And what this does for us is it allows us to keep upscaling all team members to be able to handle both.
I love that. Can I go back to something you said earlier, which is you blew up the org structure?
We did.
Right. I love that. But the skeptic in me thought, did they really? How do you actually do that, right? Part of it is figurative, of course, but how did you empower managers and individuals to remove the silos, the boundaries from their roles to do better things for customers?
It wasn't, and it still isn't 100% easy, right? Change is hard, and we're going through a lot of change. We don't want to, at any point, introduce, again, I love this word, friction into the customer experience. So we don't want to change just to change. We're looking at how we methodically go through this process and change in a way that doesn't disrupt the customer and doesn't disrupt our productivity at the same time, which also impacts the customer. There's a lot of trust building happening, because I hesitate around using the words proactive, because it became almost like a political debate. Are you proactive or are you reactive? Where do you sit in the org? And I remember thinking, we're all of it. We're everything. We're reacting, we're to an inquiry, or a customer's raising their hand through a different, channel. So what we had to start doing is normalizing that we're product success. We're all in it together. We're here as a lifeline for the customer, and that's where the conversation started shifting when we removed actually saying we were proactive versus reactive. And then we're leveraging technology to rationalize that too. So if you're familiar with Service Cloud Omni-channel, is what we're heavily leveraging to route our customers to the right resource. So based on the skill, either you've been skilled to do technical, API type of conversations, or you're skilled to help somebody with onboarding, right, into one of our new clouds. we'll route that effectively and launch you into that experience with the right resource and the right channels.
Sounds like that would be an effective way to make sure you're aligning the resources to the right customer issues.
Right, and we're going to learn.
One of the other things that we've recently designed and we're going to be implementing over the next quarter is this simplification of your entry point into the conversation with us, right? So you're coming in and you're not having to fill out an entire, almost like an employment form to tell us what's going on. But we're going to ask you some questions in that process so that we can understand more, leveraging AI as to how we can help you in that journey with maybe like a chat experience where you don't even realize you're in chat. And then we're also going to be tying in that conversation with sentiment analysis. So again, real time, we're navigating, we're learning. Are we building an experience that it's going to get you to an answer faster and give you the right outcome?
That sounds great. I have one more question, and then I want to open it up to the audience here. We started the conversation with the challenge of the economic climate, and so one of the things that I'm sure all of us are facing is how do we align finance and people who control the purse strings outside of the org, right, to get behind us in terms of these investments and what we're doing. And that's so critical. It's also so challenging. And many people that I talk to who are in both the success and the support space, right, have not historically been used to buying a lot of things, buying a lot of technology. Your biggest asset is your people, and that's also something to make a case for. But maybe Erika, starting with you, what are your thoughts here on this challenge and how to overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately going to come down to integrating with finance. I think every finance person is going to tell you no. No, do you need it? No, do you need the headcount? Like, why? How? Like, there's not something else we can adopt. I think finance was made for tech at some point, quite frankly, because they like to say no to everything. But I think a lot of it is include them. It's kind of like, how do you involve the right people? And like finance, I mean, economics is going to play a factor for us for years to come, I think, just with how things are today. And I think it's how do you partner with finance and provide the right case study and the value add and the customer experience. And I stood up this thing called Tech Tuesday in my organization. And so every Tuesday, we get the tech together. And so the tech is the T. So we actually get the technology people. The E is for experience. Is it design experience? Is it customer experience? Is it, marketing? Like who needs to be there? And the C is for the customer. We're constantly thinking about the customer, whether it's somebody internal coming to my team for our service capability or the customer externally. And then the H is the how do we work backwards to make it a better experience? And that's where we find, is it better to bring finance to the table to really get them going? And it was painful. Like our first meeting was supposed to be 60 minutes. It was like 3 hours. I'm just like, oh my God, what are we doing here? Like I was already ready to automate it 30 minutes in because I was like, you folks are all missing the point. But now we're in like this rhythmatic function where we're constantly thinking about the customer, but finance is actually now at the table with us. And I feel like that was the biggest win, is now we have everybody sitting at that table together to say, okay, what's the customer experience? How do we work backwards? Do we want to design for this capability? Okay, finance, you're going to need to open up the purse strings. And I always jokingly say, like, we're a bank, we're well funded. Come on, there's money somewhere. Finance still doesn't find that funny. I do, but it is on them. That's where we're trying to now work with finance to make them a little bit more humorous. But I mean, that's really how you need to do it, is you need everybody at the table. The one team that you miss at the table creates the worst experience, and that customer is who you're missing.
Lean in, bring them in sooner in the process,
yes,
and
very
then
much
they're
so.
behind you because they see the impact.
Yeah.
Ben, what do you?
Yeah, so I'm deeply close to my finance partners. In fact, I give them like analytics to do on my business, so they kind of understand the business better versus just the spreadsheets. So that just helps them feel like they have a better sense, for the decisions we make. But what I really have found successful or effective, I guess, is just do the right things without having to be asked. And it sounds so simple, but like if I don't need a headcount, I just hold a headcount. If I don't need to buy something, I don't buy something. If I see a duplicated piece of software across the enterprise, I say, who owns that software? What are we paying for that? I have something similar. Let's rationalize that. The point is, when you do the right things, the finance people see that. And they say, you know what, Erika always makes good decisions. We kind of trust her judgment when she asks for money, because she's not always asking for money. Sometimes she's doing the right thing without being told. And sometimes it's good to just get caught doing the right thing. And you build up credibility of finance. They know that you're a judicious, user of the company's resources. And versus people who spend it willy-nilly, they're the ones who are always going to be under scrutiny. So, lead from the front and try and do the right thing without being asked, and you'll begin to find the finance people are more supportive of your needs instead of always trying to inspect and criticize your needs.
That sounds great. Katherine, final words on that?
Yeah, I agree with everything we just kind of shared here. I would say the important thing for me is bringing them closer to the business, right? I spend a lot of time talking about location strategy because you can over-rotate on that one and it looks great on paper and then we're all exposed, right? Because you have an over-rotation of maybe your capacity in one location and something happens, we know that, now we have a situation. So if I can walk them through the why, we figure out the how and the what together. We go through and we'll do strategies. I'm like, well, I'm thinking about this. The other day I just had a meeting with my finance business partner. I'm like, wow, my overtime cost, that's really high. Where did that come from? And then I let them go figure it out and come back to me. And then I say, ooh, okay, let's talk about that. And then we strategize together and we walk away with a plan that we both kind of have our fingerprints all over. But I really do leverage them to give me good insights as to how I could be more effective at my business. And I also help them understand how they can be a better business partner at the same time. And I love data models. I'm all about my capacity models, my forecasts, how are we doing to actuals. I make them sit through all of that. And it just helps the conversation because we're not playing catch up, right? They're always engaged.
So they understand the business and then they're a collaborative partner.
100%.
Yeah, that's a great closing thought. Thank you. Let's open it up. Any questions in the audience?
Tons of experience up here, many years in working in leadership management, so probably the perfect question for this. For somebody who's coming into being a new time support manager, for example, maybe came up from team leadership, did technical work before, walking into this economic climate with the challenges you face where you have quantitative tightening and you have companies essentially mirroring that Federal Reserve approach, what advice do you give to that person to help them succeed as a leader and manager in the face of those headwinds?
It's like, no, it's totally fine. For me, I definitely would say obsess over your customers. Like every customer matters, irrelevant of the size of the account. The second thing for me is much like you'll probably hear from all of us, measure what matters. Measure what matters to you and to your company and to your customers. That's where you're gonna make an impact. Don't be the person that comes in with a scorecard and it's like, here's 50 shades of red. And it's like really good, but like I'm measuring every single thing and it's like, somebody like me is gonna look and go, but what can I do to help you? What do you need a tool? Do you need a capability? And if you're showing me 50 shades of red, like I've already checked out.
I would say certainly focus on your team, but have a high bar for talent. Like don't ever let the bar drop for talent, particularly in this market when you can, frankly. And then in the climate we're in, I would just be working really well cross-functionally. How else can you help the business? How else can your team do more than just heads down, closed cases? How can you connect the work that they do to the work of your leader and their peers? And so everyone feels like the work you're doing is driving a bigger impact than just CSAT.
I would tie in being very intentional with where you put your efforts, right? You're gonna have to be tight with your objectives in this space. In the past, I think a lot of us have run into the situation where we wanna do it all, because it all will make, in our minds, a major impact. You're gonna have to be real diligent in making sure you focus on the top 3, if you can. That's kind of my rule of thumb, is to spend time on the ones that are, stack ranked, and go be very, very aggressive at them and crush them. Don't do a ton of little things that are not as meaningful, and just go big. I love big swings. Take the big swings, but do it with an all-in mindset.
We have a question over here.
One thing I would say is make sure the results you're delivering are aligned to other parts of the business. So by that, it could be which are the most important customers to sales? Which are the customers that are renewing this quarter? Like, just make sure you're intentional with the results that are going to help key other results around the business. You're not on an island, and so you got to make sure your results really do connect to other people's results, and then people say that work really helps the bigger picture. That's all.
Team sport.
It's a team sport.
100%.
Okay, so my question is basically aligned on if data is driving change, how do you drive data? How do you step out of the watermelon and lead the masses in the direction that you want to go? Because at some point, not every problem is meant to be solved, it's meant to be rewritten. And I just wonder what you all would think about that.
Why you gotta look at the engineer? It's always about the data.
It all starts with the data.
I know it does.
I'll start this one. So I was at Tableau before I came to my current role, and so we had no shortage of data and no shortage of ways to analyze data, but you really can get wrapped on the axle with the data. And so I think someone said earlier, what are the questions you're trying to answer? What are the decisions you're trying to make? Get enough data and move on. You've got to get out of that vortex of just like analyzing, slicing, and just get back to, I think I've got enough data, it tells me what I need to know, I'm ready to go make a decision. And if you're wrong, go change your decision versus the analysis paralysis. And I think that's one of the risks that we're falling into, because there's just so much data, everything's measurable, so you can just sit around and look at dashboards all day, but that's not running the business.
I think it goes back to like signals. I really treat it as a signal, and then if something's going red, I'm like, well, what's that telling me? Right? In the conversations, we also try hard not to overanalyze, to your point. I think that's a really good thing to emphasize, because you could be in that conversation for hours, and then people will question, well, are you sure the data's good? Love those conversations, because they're productive. Because then someone goes and runs a report that shows you something different. One of the things that we've decided on that's really important, I don't know, I would actually like your guys' opinions, we have a single source of truth. If someone in my team comes to me and says, this is happening, I'm like, I don't see that. So my SOT doesn't have that. Well, it's over here. Well, then I'm not, you need to work with the team that does the SOT, make sure their data's good. If there's a problem, go fix it. Because I was having all these different, well, I slice it this way, and I see this, and I see that, and I'm like, that's not productive. So trying to rationalize that and then have all that energy into that, we're all reading from the same dashboard.
Good idea. Yeah.
We started a conversation on ChatGPT, but in today's still world, right, we are talking about email communication to customers.
Oh, yeah.
And we still haven't evolved, right, in the scaling mechanism of how we communicate. So just question to the panel, what do you do with your large customer base? How do you communicate incidents? How do you communicate with customers in large scale other than email?
I'm amazed at how email is so predominant still, right? If you go into a web form and you create a case, it's basically an email you're submitting. And I sometimes still perplexed, maybe the word I want to use here, when I will receive a SEV1 that's sent in via an email. And then it's the end of the day, and the person went home. I'm like, processing that one. Like, all those elements make me just kind of pause. What we're trying to do is drive more live engagements, right? We're trying to drive more to chat specifically. We want to have live connections. So part of our design process is, if you're going to declare a SEV1, which we want you to do, we want to know, we want you to engage immediately on chat, or we want you to schedule a call with us. We want to be a lifeline that's real and available to you. So we're doing more intentional ways of getting the customer to see the channel that aligns to what we're hearing from them. Like, if you're really in this state, it's urgent, we want to connect live. We want to, go that path. What's interesting, I don't know if you've all experienced this, I get a couple different camps. I've got people who say, well, chat's only good for the simple things. And I'm like, really? I think it's good for everything. If not, I'm not looking to solve every problem in it, but if I can capture all this incredible insight from you in a live engagement, and then we maybe go to async, that's okay, right? But if you just do async from the get-go, it's a longer total time to resolve, right? We go a lot of back and forth, and we're actually using SupportLogic to flag when I've got an engineer who's hit a tipping point of how many back and forths in email we're going. Oh, we have a manager immediately jump in and say, how can I help you? Let's get on a call with a customer. There's too many. I think our tipping point is 5. And I'm hoping we can actually learn from that and bring it down even further, because it's not effective. So we're trying to drive campaigns and awareness to get more live engagements. And we're tracking real closely the resolve, one-touch resolution kind of models, and looking at sentiment analysis around it, making sure the experience is where it needs to be, because to me that'll drive repeat business.
Yeah, there is still one cat, right, which talks about web to case is the best way to go.
Yeah.
Because you can control your own SLA, you can respond on your own, right?
Yeah.
And there's another cat which talks about the live engagement, you are the Katherine, right? So talk about in terms of customer segmentation. I'm sure you have enterprise customers, you have emerging customers, right? Who pay $50 a month, but do you have different segmentations?
We do.
In terms of how you approach it?
You know, it's interesting. I was on a call with a very large customer who originally we had met because there had been an escalation. And in that process, we became like true partners. And we started meeting on a regular quarterly basis just to meet. And I did some analysis on the cases before I went into the call, and I sat down virtually with him and I explained to him, it's interesting. You've submitted close to 66 cases in 1 quarter. That is abnormal volume. I mean, if I require that many cases to be submitted for you, then I've got other issues like on our platform that I'd be really concerned about. So what I did is then I also looked at the sentiment analysis to try to understand what kind of cases were coming in, and what it was is a lot of how do I's. Right? And then I was able to have a conversation with the customer that explained to him that there are incredible tools out there for enablement. We have Trailblazer, right? You can go and get administered and so forth. And also, did you know you could do chat? And he's like, no. I thought I had to go through an 800 number.
Mind blown.
Yeah, and he's like, why aren't we using chat? And I'm like, exactly. It just really highlighted with me that every one of my customers, no matter what size you are from a revenue, an ARR perspective, we've got to be really marketing to them the ways they can have a better experience. They shouldn't have to figure it out, right? It starts with the entry point. And getting the personalization comes with that. So we require now that we ask that you have a Trailblazer ID, so we know who you are. We know what success plan you have, which is basically our support plans, that you can choose based on what you want to achieve in outcomes. And then we personalize it based on that. And we make sure you're getting the right recommendations and channels and content and engagements from that. It's like democratizing the experience, right? Because I don't want to say that only my large clients should get this channel. I want everybody to have a channel. I want to do it 24/7, and I want to be effective in it. And so that's how we're really starting to invest in the experience when you first come in and getting you the right level of engagement.
If only that worked for airline seat assignment.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I'm with you.
Other questions?
What's the signal that you didn't know you needed a couple years ago and now can't live without?
Good one.
Negative sentiment. Live negative sentiment.
So let me ask a question, not knowing the SupportLogic tool.
Yeah.
Where is that getting derived from? How
Sure.
are you determining it? Is that something you're setting? Is that
Right.
something that the AI is determining?
Right.
Somebody's
Sure.
their tone of voice or their word choice.
Well, I'll start with kind of the why I said that, and then I'll kind of go into how we get to that. With CSAT, depending on the product, and the way you're asking the CSAT questions, or even the vehicle you use to ask or deliver the survey, your return rate is probably not where you want it to be, really, right? Let's say 10 to 15%, and you're calling it a win. Well, that's only a very small percentage. You're like, oh, yeah. It's only a small percentage, right, of your actual transactions and your customer sentiment. That was always bothering me. I was like, oh, I'm only getting a piece of my customer's true experience. And then when we started pulling in the actual live, true copy of what's happening in a case into SupportLogic, we were able to start getting that full picture. So now I have a 100% view of what's happening with my customer base. It had to be trained, right? So you come in with some basic assumptions. We think this equals negative. We think this behavior equals negative. Then what would we learn? And you'll get false signals, because just like any AI, you have to go in there and you have to feed it. And that's what we were going through and learning. An interesting example, we were seeing some negative sentiment in a very specific group that I had in one of my, I'll call it my sub-products. And when we dug into it, what we found was that those team members were copying just basic generic text and putting it in there, right? That was something that I then fed into the model to look for, right? Then I'm like, oh, we need to know that, because we don't want that. We want it personalized. So again, it's an investment in feeding the AI, and you'll get the right types of signals around it. But honestly, I think negative sentiment was the aha for me, because now I'm not, in that reactive mode a couple weeks later. I'm in that proactive mode of engaging immediately to de-escalate.
And just a general thought following up on that, what SupportLogic does is it actually mines all of the unstructured data within all of the support interactions. And then it looks at both the case history and then the context. So it's not just looking at single point in time. And as Katherine said, we have a base model that rolls out, but then there's training involved, and we fine tune it and get to the right level of accuracy, right? And that's sometimes a moving target, but that's how we do it. And obviously happy to go into more detail on that as a follow-up.
What we do with that too is we are able to whisper, we call it whispering, right, into a case to help someone achieve better results. Thank you for the technical piece of it. I'm like, oh yeah, we feed it, we train it.
Have time for one more.
One more from me.
Yep.
So one of the things that I find fascinating about ChatGPT is its ability to sort of like read the user, and kind of combining that with the idea of like a technology like Gong. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
You essentially like see like how often somebody's speaking in a conversation, if they're overspeaking, if they're underspeaking. I probably overspeak more than I underspeak. Kind of thing. I'm not as familiar with SupportLogic, so I'm still going to get like that demo. But would it be helpful for business leaders and managers and organizations to have a solution that would help profile customers and sort of a prediction model to say, what type of customer do I have? My mom's worked in like special education for years. Some people learn by doing, some people learn by hearing, some people learn by seeing. So if you could predict like the type of customer and the percentage of customers that fall into those different buckets and the amount of specific help that specific customer needs, time-wise, would that be a really great solution? You guys think in the kind of future of how we like create the capacity modeling?
That's a great idea. What do you guys think? Well, I have a point of view, but I'm curious to think. What do you think about that?
I'm sure there's an application for that. So, I don't know who said earlier. It sounds like there's probably some privacy considerations there and acknowledgement with customers about how they're going to be profiled. So you just got to be careful how that would be applied. But I'm sure there's some potential there. Also, if you think about the different skill sets of users, certain hotspots users have, and how they like to be communicated to, I'm sure there's a lot of potential to glean that and then help inform the case handling in ways that would make it better for the customer. But you just want to be transparent about like how they're going to be profiled.
And I was kind of pulling from what you said earlier, Katherine. It's like you had that one user who like needed that really, really hands-on experience, and there's always like those people, right? That like they need that, and it's just who they are. And so it would be interesting if like you could model that,
That's you?
Yeah, it's all in the data. Yeah, so no, that's a great idea, great topic. That's not something that we do today per se, is profiling individual people, but we do aggregate a profile of accounts, customers, right, at a company level, because we have that history, the case history and the context to be able to say, okay, this is a type of account that, based on the type of issues they typically have, would align with a support engineer who has a particular skill set, background, language profile, time zone availability, and sort of align that to the right resource. But that what you're talking about is definitely something that would be exciting in the future.
Yeah, I think you can personalize the experience based on previous visits. So when you're able to have them authenticate, there's a couple things you're learning from them, right? What products they have, what success plans or support plans they align to, what entitlements they should be offered in the experience. But you can also learn from that, right? About last time they chose chat. Maybe that feeds into the chat recommendation, right? Because it was a great success for them. We actually resolved the case. So we could feed it into the experience to make it more aligned to what we saw as a good outcome for them in the past. But I do agree there's a fine line as to how creepy we want to be with that.
That's the topic for the next conversation. We will close out, but we will be around if you have more questions or conversation. I'd like to thank Katherine, Ben, Erika for joining us tonight. And please check out our website, sxlive.com. You can see on-demand content from other previous sessions, and please consider attending our June virtual event. And we'd love to have more conversations. So thank you all again for joining.
Thank you.
Cool.